Welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And for those of you having challenges with our normal YouTube stream, the show is streaming live on the Multi-TV World page on YouTube. So you can watch from that page. And let's go to look at the issues, how we avoid normalization of corruption. But before that, just a couple of messages, and this one says that the present Attorney General has done a lot to retrieve the money from Woyome. The retrieval processes are over. His assets are being sold. There was a publication in the Graphic, I am aware of that. It says that the Attorney General has fought off all the endeavors by Woyome to conceal his assets, including securing a final ruling from the Supreme Court in July 2019 that UT Bank was in collusion with Woyome. So that is a good point to note. And if you read the Graphic, the Woyome's properties that were being auctioned, as initially when the ruling was given, we all read this. Number 1, executive presidential property known as number 259, situated at Trasaco Valley, Phase 2, Ameri Court. The auction date is the 20th of December 2019. Executive presidential property, residential property, I say presidential, residential property known as number 260, situated at Trasaco Valley. So all of these are in Trasaco Valley. That will be auctioned on the 23rd of December. Residential property number 372/2 of the Kokan Crescent residential area, Pehe, Accra. Auction is the 31st of December. And the sale is ordered by the Deputy Sheriff of the General Jurisdiction. So that's just a bit of information as far as the Woyome matter.
Covered by the Lands Commission, and they'll also be sold.
Okay. That Ghanaians want to know a lot more about this, so they know that some progress is being going on. Samuel Bryan says that corruption is the enemy of development and of good governance. It must be gotten rid of. Both the government and the people at large must come together to achieve this national objective. And he's quoting Prataba Patel. We of the NPP respect and acknowledge Afrobarometer's findings. We accept it in good faith. As much as it doesn't smear dark bitumen on us, as much as you will have your listeners and viewers believe, it is a call that has some grammar situation. I need to take time and read it and correct before I can share. All right, so this one from Dr. Akufo-Addo in Evans, Georgia. He says a fixation on police corruption in Ghana is a bit contradictory, and I am relieved. It is only based on a perception. The fight against corruption in Ghana remains a background noise that is not dislodging the louder workings of politicians. We need to fry the bigger fishes and scrutinize the dichotomous consciousness of real corruptibles in Ghana. The right picture of corruption in Ghana is opaque. So we got to do something about that. Thank you for that. And then someone too is asking, in regard to the Bost dirty oil deal, what have they done about the committee findings that were instituted? Among others, the committee found that and recommended a thorough investigation into the sale of slop between 2014 and 2017 to ensure clean products were not illegitimately downgraded as slop and sold at a loss to Bost and the Ghana Revenue Authority, whose petroleum taxes were foregone. the committee estimated that about 1.52 million Ghana cedis may have been lost to bust. This is Appendix L of the report that was issued. Just they ask the government to take immediate steps to surcharge Mevimpina or the transporters of the returned off-spec products for the lost volume of 8 million plus. Recover payment for the 471,000 litres lifted from Mevimpina. The payment must not be the nominal value but must include the interest to ensure the economic value is retained and bust is not shortchanged. So all these were the recommendations, and what has happened? That's the question that this person is asking. The committee concluded that clean products may have been deliberately downgraded and sold as slop or off-spec. This, the committee believes, borders on criminality and may have willfully led to a major loss to bust and to the state in the form of petroleum taxes. The question is, what has been done about that? Okay, so quickly, I should finish with Dr. Kuja Asante. So let me start with all of you, starting with Sulemana. So what shall we do to avoid this danger of normalization of corruption in our society?
Well, I think there is just...
And we know that much of the corruption is grant political corruption, really.
I think that it's just doing what has to be done, which is that people who perpetrate corrupt practices are punished. If you take 2014, where 74% of the population, people were saying, 83% of the people were saying corruption has increased. And down to 2017, we have a new government. And in fact, the 2016 election was fought and won on corruption. And I don't think that it is just the 1 or 2 or so cases that are being prosecuted that would have caused people to have that high belief that corruption was increasing. And for me, until we begin to see people being punished, for example, a classical case, the Australian visa issue. So what? Investigations were conducted and concluded that nobody did it and that the people miraculously came by the
president has seen the investigation. We haven't seen it yet. Has seen the report. We haven't.
So the point is, so long as we continue to, okay, certain cases, investigations concluded and, the report vindicates this and so on and so forth, until, another government comes in and then begins to make noise about the opposition, then the normalization would continue. And as I said,
comes into effect in 2020. Will you make an RTI request for this report?
I think for RTI, we are all, waiting for January 2020 to come. I think there are so many cases, so many issues that people are already lining up,
right?
In terms of the demands that will be made. And I guess the courts are going to be busier, and the lawyers are going to be really, really busy. Hopefully, because it is one law that I hope.
Okay,
it is one piece of law that I hope, if well implemented, can result in a significant leapfrog in the fight against corruption that we've all been struggling to deal with.
Great. Yes, Kofi?
Right. I'll start from the Woyome case.
Avoiding the danger of normalization of corruption. All of you said it is normalized. Yes. That for me and for our viewers and listeners is bad. We shouldn't get to that.
Yeah. General principle should be, we should take steps to institute a morbid fear of corruption across this country. The question is how to do that. And that's why I'm saying I'm going to start from the Woyome case. Why would I start from Woyome case? Because this thing seized the nation for years. It was a major reason why this government came into power and was one of the main drivers of the expectation. Now, if my senior Godfred has gone this far and done all these things, I'm saying again, Woyome has almost been forgotten. Given how important it is to the perception, to whatever it is, honestly, there are bigger problems in corruption than the 51 million of Woyome. But Woyome has this public, face. there is no reason why...
It was a winning election campaign mantra.
There is no reason why they haven't held a press conference to update this country in detail about how William fought and how they fought him back to the point where now there's a list, and it's about the December 20th or so that they're going to do the auction. It should be a national spectacle.
23rd and 31st.
So, Senior Godfrey, do a press conference and explain where you've got into, because he's really fought hard. Okay, it's not done yet. They are unearthing more, all right?
At each stage, the media has reported what is going on. So why should he be doing a press conference?
But I'm telling you that it is not hitting the right notes.
Okay.
So that's weird. Now, what do we do? How do we make sure there's a morbid fear? Let me tell you something. When Anas did his work, the things that he did, I have a few judge friends, and because of what we do, people know I know Anas. One of the judges called me and said, "Me pao chow, catch and demon yet bill." Tree.
Yeah.
Meaning, I beg you, tell your friend you should never do this thing again, because it's totally disorganized, basically created a lot of fear amongst the judges. Now, I'm not saying there should be such fear and whatever, but it is not a bad thing.
Are you saying what Anas reported is not going on still?
It is.
No, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying,
at that
I'm
time,
saying that's why I'm
cease,
using this, and the person who told me knows himself. He called me and said, "I beg you, tell him not to do this thing again." And it was because it is making them so scared of touching anything that looks like corruption. And I agree with the president when he says you use the Anas principle. The Anas principle is equal to using sting operations and undercover operations. It is useful in every developed country. They do it. I don't have the time to give you examples from the states, etc. But look at this. If, and whether it's customs or it's GFA or whatever, wherever Anas goes, when he does his job, there is this change of atmosphere. And people are not sure who is Anas and who is not. And I'm thinking,
it's the same Anas that some people are trying very hard to bring down,
which is where I'm going next. So
things that clearly appear not to stick.
So first, please, the president must act on the Anas principle. We have YOKU, we have the OSP, we have other institutions, including the Police Criminal Investigations Department, use these things and use other things so that there will be this fear of corruption in the system. Then, stop attacking Anas. And when I say stop attacking Anas, I don't mean the government is attacking Anas, but there must be overt support for his work. Look, I know about the many problems surrounding the person and the accusations and the other things. And there are some of them have come to me even as a lawyer.
He doesn't have the support he used to have.
He doesn't have the support. And I'm not saying Anas is perfect, but I'm saying he's a net positive to this country. He's done more good than bad. And I know some of my friends who say, oh, this and that. We need to look at the bigger picture. And if we need to do something about, refining some aspects, that's fine. But the point is, we must see Anas as a net positive. And if we have to do something about, dealing with some of the issues around him, let's do it. But we will not deal with the perception of corruption, nor deal with corruption. If we attack people like Anas and Manasseh, we must be seen to be fighting corruption.
But like you said, they are human. When they make mistakes, we should also take them on.
We should take them on and help them
if taking them on means fighting them, why not?
Not fighting them in terms of what they do. Of course, the police are there. We say the police are the most corrupt. We haven't gotten rid of the whole police. We are working to, refine it.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Yes, what were you saying?
No, I was saying that I'm wondering whether we are saying that the corruption problem is the lack of capacity of our state investigative bodies to do their job. It is not it. It is the willingness to act
commitment, yes.
and to punish.
But the lack of capacity is also the human resource. I just mentioned to you that IOCO requires 832 personnel to operate, and it currently has only 374.
But what are they doing with the 374?
They have used that to investigate investigate about 2 million cases, retrieved a lot of money to the state. Well, perhaps maybe they are also not blowing their trumpet, so you don't hear about it. So let's get to Kaku and then finish up with how do we end this normalization committee in corruption?
Well, the normalization has been with us for a long time. I'm sure it's getting worse, but it has been here for a very long time. We should encourage, look, this particular Auditor General, his activist spirit, I love it. And I think that we should encourage him to stay focused on his business, his mandate rather, and pursue the line that he's pursuing.
He's suffering the political thing too. People are saying he's NDC, and yet that's an NDC man, if you like, who has investigated NDC people that he's not obliged by law to investigate.
That's why I say you should stay focused. You should ignore those ugly noises. He's in court. We are hoping that court will settle that matter quickly.
Right.
There's another case at the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that too can be settled quickly so that he gets the space to focus and then deal with this disallowance and surcharges thing proper. You should multiply the effect of those things. Okay? Government should also make public the Australia visa report. I have seen it. I think some newspapers publish excerpts. I've seen the full report. The deputy minister, who usually is the focus, was purged of any liability or culpability based on evidence. But there were others who were mentioned and are being, there's a docket being prepared on them. Indeed, there's also an angle, some, you lawyers call it, some cooperation between Ghana and Australia. There's a
mutual legal
assistance. So the CID has written to the Australians, and the Australians are giving some, are cooperating. I haven't checked if the final document has come, but some names have been listed, and they've cited them, they've indicated that those people should be charged and prosecuted for their involvement in that visa thing.
And they don't include any of the guys at the top?
There's no politician in there. And because, again, you have to check how those things are done.
And that feeds into the mistrust of the people of the processes.
That's why I say if you make the report available, then we can come and sit here and scrutinize it.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. That's the problem.
Yes.
Because people will know that these guys low down there will take instructions and do things. And then in the end, they are the ones to suffer. And the people at the top, nobody. I'm just saying that's the perception that feeds into.
I agree. I agree with you, but you cannot send a case of suspicion or speculation to the court.
That's right.
For prosecution. You can't. So when the report is made public, we can scrutinize it and see whether it's fair or not. Boss 2, the report, is a very bulky one. I've seen it. That too must be made public. Okay.
But the steps that they asked to be done, do you know if anything has happened?
I don't know. I haven't checked. But you see, when the report is made public, it constitutes a certain pressure on...
And helps the perception.
And helps the perception. That's right. So they should make that public, you know.
All right.
The Office of Special Prosecutor, you know, he's like the Auditor General. They got a spirit.
Yeah.
Those were the right people to put where they were put. I think that our friend Martin should begin, first of all, he should tell us the cases he's investigating.
Right.
Which are the cases? Their status.
Public.
People are saying he's chasing Ayarga over peanuts when there's a lot of, there is a BCU matter brought to him with evidence. He's not following it.
I won't go to that extreme. If you still one person of the state, does that...
But no.
Does that leave
there
you
are,
out? Yes.
Not everything is the same. There are big problems. Don't go for
but
the
I'm
little
saying
things.
that I won't do that. What I'm saying is that he should give us a list of the cases he's investigating, where the cases have reached, and then he should do some work. I have patience with that office. It's a new entity. We created it for a purpose. If you read the memorandum and all those things that came in, there's a reason why that came in. And it's not an agency that will die tomorrow. So I have faith in the long-term capability of that office, regardless of who will be manning the office.
And in fact, what you have asked, what you have demanded from the OSP is a mandatory requirement of the law. He must keep the people updated.
That's right. He did his first one, his first release.
But he should also be explaining to the public, because we understand somewhat that all the money we got to know, 180 million, is that so? That was allocated to him. He never accessed a dime. So if he's complaining, if you didn't access it, why are you complaining? Yes. So how do we move away from the normalization?
Well, let me start with where Kofi ended about signaling. Actually, in one of the Afrobarometer, I think it's around 7th Afrobarometer, we asked, you know, what should we do to the money we recover from? And one of the very interesting, and it was a popular one, a very interesting proposal, was that we use it to build, you know, social amenities and like schools and hospitals, and we should write on it that this money was paid by money recovered from stolen money recovered from social and so. So people want that. It has to be a deterrence, a cultural deterrence, because they said that they didn't want only the person, you know, to suffer the shame. but his family has to suffer the shame. So if you know that that is going to happen to you, you think twice about going to engage in corruption.
Maybe a bit of that is what Yoko has started. When they are going to confiscate your assets and they have a problem with it, they come, instead of putting the court order on the building, they graffiti the order on it.
Because in Nigeria, the EFCC does that, very, it's a huge, all over the place. So for me, the signaling is very important. And then the ANAS principle. When we did our stand against corruption last year during the anti-corruption week, we said the letter that we sent to the president, we proposed that he should just 6 months deploy, whether it's BNI, Yoko, undercover agents, just to hospitals, your big hospital, Kolebu, whatever, schools, whatever, and get people extorting money from poor people who cannot even afford the services. And you'll be doing that, you just sample places so that people don't really know that it's going to happen to you. And begin to just build a psyche. Because one of the other things that we have to do is to really just transparently share information about fees and things at public services. Because that also helps people use that to extort. But we thought that even if you did it for 6 months, as a baseline, of signaling to people that it's not business as usual, you are going to begin to make a difference in terms of how people behave. Because that petty corruption also feeds into the perception that nothing has changed. So we proposed that. It's not been done. We proposed it to Madam Maud when even she was Attorney General. So for me, that signal is important. Then the other thing is when you are dealing with something that is so pervasive, you almost have to go back to the core issues of values, integrity, and character. Because as Professor Tifa was saying, it nibbles at the core value. You begin to see wrong as right. And you can't even make the difference anymore. So as the money comes to you, when you are taking it today, you're taking it tomorrow, you just feel like, and these days, you can even describe it.
Facilitation is no longer seen as corruption.
You can describe it as a blessing. If you had gone to church the day before, you can say, well, this is an opportunity, it was prophesied that you will get this opportunity, and you've gotten it. When you get to that point, it is a very, very dangerous state. We are talking about terrorism at our door. If you can bribe a police officer 10 cedis and get away with a cargo full of guns, you just imagine what will happen if we get in these things. So those things are critical. I just want to use the opportunity to make some correction. For us, it's about the state and the kind of society we want to build. So when these perception stuff come and these corruption discussions, one government, yes, you have to hold the government responsible. But if nothing is changed in terms of correcting the system, then we are in problem. And that's why I want to, this 9.6 billion thing that has been banded around, when we release this report, I just want to put it in context. So basically, we were talking about asset recovery. We did a documentary where we were trying to show the importance. Corruption Watch did a documentary about asset recovery. And we're trying to show the importance of asset recovery. That we can do all of this. Even people don't see that we recover the money, it will not be a deterrent. Because what do people steal the money to go and do? They want to go and spend it on things. So if you recover the money, you begin to create a deterrence. And we said that based on the cases that we have been doing on Corruption Watch alone, the amounts of the volume of money that has been banded around as monies that could be lost to Ghana, it was 9.6 billion. And this includes cases like the medical stores, NCA matters, even the disallowances. Right? But then, so we can play the politics, but the point is that corruption is an existential threat.
Thank
to
you.
Our nation, and we have to address it.
Thank you very much, Kwekubako Jr., Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante, Kofi Bento, Suleiman Ibrahima. We will take a break and return to ask the question, what did the president do wrong in announcing the abortion of the referendum? Then this last text message I read says something, the design of our democracy makes corruption practically a necessity for the facilitation and viability of partisan politics.
Wow.
Party funding and the exclusion of politicians from the broader economy when not in power makes corruption a logical consequence. How many businesses will rehire past MP or minister whose government is out of power? Senyor Hosi sent in that one. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's the most authoritative news analysis platform. And we have got to the subjects that got me to bring my constitution to the studio. All right, so that the necessary references, when need be, will be made. So before we go and hear the president, Kwame Esedu-Sapon says, corruption in our country is a matter of optics. This optics feeds perception. If you know how much a public office holder is paid and realize that in no time their lifestyle has changed, perceiving corruption is not rocket science. Let's hear President Nana Addo Akufo-Addo speak on aborting the referendum.
I thought and still think that such reforms should be based on a broad national consensus. It was in furtherance of this and other matters that on Tuesday, 18th April 2017, a little over 4 months into my mandate, I held a meeting with my three predecessors, the first, second, and fourth presidents of the Fourth Republic, Their Excellencies Jerry John Rawlings, John Agyekum Kufuor, and John Dramani Mahama, at Jubilee House to seek their views and counsel on these issues. I came away from that meeting with the view that there was consensus amongst us that the time had come for political parties to participate openly in district assembly elections and local governance. Indeed, amongst the leadership of Parliament and amongst members of Parliament on both sides, and amongst virtually all stakeholders who had been consulted, either by me or by the Minister for Local Government and Rural Development, the clear indications were that there was a broad national consensus for the repeal of Article 53. Regrettably, 2 weeks ago, the main opposition party, the National Democratic Congress, made what I can only describe as a U-turn and stated that it was no longer prepared to go along with the national consensus.
Right, so that's the president in that broadcast to the state, the nation, and that was it on Sunday? Yeah. Okay, right. Where do we start from? Yeah, Kweku. So people have faulted the president. I've seen you have some things you have highlighted. So tell us what you think. Shouldn't he have allowed us to go vote? If he was afraid of no, we vote no.
I know you don't mean it. Because see, I've read some elsewhere. Oh, you see the kids playing.
They're in a hurry. They want you to come in quick.
There's video games. Okay. It pops up. I've been trying to even delete it, and I'm unable to do it. No, I'm so technically backward.
I get it.
Say it again. I'm sure the focus now is on whether the president had the mandate or the constitutional.
Yes, there are some who have raised that issue.
No. See, I was one of those who advocated for the abandonment of this project in the wake of the NDC's U10. And my position was based on the fact that this kind of exercises, particularly when you seek to amend an entrenched provision of the Constitution, we all know the requirements, the 40% turnout, and out of the 40%, you should have a 75% voting yes. And you had a situation where the principal stakeholders, in terms of political parties, understanding this, agreeing that they would build a consensus and go for the yes. Other stakeholders that were consulted all were going in the same direction. And I've seen a lot of documentation to show from 2017 to 2019 the kind of interactions and things that went on and the commitments that were made relative to let's campaign for yes. The very moment that path was broken, in my view, it was worthless going because there was no way we were going to achieve the yes for the thing to be removed. And I've heard people say that, oh, that is like playing football when we're kids, and when things aren't going your way, you take the ball, say, match me ball. It's a comical interpretation of a very serious issue, in my candid opinion. It's allowed some comic relief, but that's not what the issue is. The issue is what I've just told you. But does the president have the right or the mandate? I'm not a lawyer. You are lawyers. I've tried to interrogate the issue and seek some education from some lawyers and even judges, especially retired judges.
Yeah, and briefly, what do they tell you?
And I was referred to the fact that this is a bill. As we speak, it was still a bill.
Right.
Before the referendum, it remained a bill.
That's correct.
I've read Mr. Stephen Kwaku-Asari's views. I saw a banter between him and Kofi Bento.
Right.
And I realized that he's brought in the element of the constitutional instrument, 120. And he's hinging on that. But I'm still educated, informed by some of these authorities that I've spoken to. That
so the constitutional instrument you refer to is the constitutional instrument that was passed empowering the Electoral Commission to take the bill to a referendum.
Yes.
All right.
And until the referendum is held, the bill remains a bill.
Yes. Right.
And it's before Parliament.
Sure. That's right.
And I'm told that I was asked to check Article 297 of the Constitution, implied power, etc. The C, it says where a power is given to a person or authority to do or enforce the doing of an act or a thing, all such powers shall be deemed to be also given as are necessary to enable that person or authority to do or enforce the thing, the doing of the act or thing. D, where a power is conferred to make any constitutional or statutory instrument, regulation or rule, or pass any resolution or give any direction, the power shall be construed as including the power exercisable in the same manner to amend or to revoke the constitutional or statutory instrument, regulation, rules, or resolution, or as direction as the case may be. The education I got is to the effect that since the thing is a bill and is still before Parliament and the referendum hadn't happened, under Standing Order 132, what the Attorney General did based on the instructions from the President was in order, nothing unconstitutional. Okay. If you go to the 297 that I've read, it shows that somebody who has been given the power to exercise discretion actually impliedly has the power to undo what he may have done.
That is when the law donating that power to you to do the thing has not circumscribed how you should undo it.
Yes.
If the law tells you appoint a judge,
yes,
then says after you appointed the judge, you cannot dismiss that judge unless you go through this process. You must follow that process.
I agree.
But if it doesn't provide how to dismiss the judge, then the power to appoint the judge includes an implied power to disappoint that judge.
If the referendum had occurred, there is no way this bill could have been withdrawn.
Right.
That's all.
Okay.
So for me, based on this education that I've had, and I'm saying from lawyers as well as judges, particularly retired judges, some of who sat on the Supreme Court and ruled on very serious matters, I think I'm inclined to go along with those who think the president has not committed an unconstitutionality.
They just directed you to read a provision of the Constitution by your own reading of it. Is it,
a non-lawyer
is it enough for you?
Yes, I think there's.
More than the lawyer.
I think the president is right. But you see, bottom line, maybe we should go to the Supreme Court.
I think so.
It helps.
Okay.
That's the way to grow our democracy.
Yeah.
Go to Supreme Court.
So let's come to Kojo, who thinks that there's even a possibility of somebody going to the Supreme Court. To do what? What are they going to say?
Hinted.
No,
The
seriously.
Hansard
I mean,
hinted
so
that
I
they
share Kwekwa's concerns because I think that once the process. So if you take the normal bill in Parliament, right? The Parliament is in full control of the bill, from beginning to end. This introduces this kind of step that goes out to the people, all right? So the referendum process through the CI now takes it out and gives it to another institution, which is the Electoral Commission, to undertake this process. Then it comes back to Parliament. Right? Now, if you take a purposive interpretation of it, right, at that point in time, you have set in motion certain actions, which are obviously consistent with what a referendum should be, which is you want to ask the people a question. You are expended all kinds of resources to undertake this process. If you have a power to just curtail it at any point, like any other bill, which has not become actionable yet, right? A normal bill will not become actionable until it has become assented to by the president. And if there isn't going to be any expenditure or anything, it will be based on when that bill has become an act. This doesn't have that same structure. It stops the parliamentary process at some point, takes it out from Parliament to give it to another state institution to conduct the referendum, and when the people decide, then it comes back for Parliament to amend that particular provision.
So this is your focus. Yeah. Article 290, Clause 4, which says, after the bill has been read the first time in Parliament, it shall not be proceeded with further. First time reading. It shall not be proceeded with further unless it has been submitted to a referendum held throughout Ghana, and at least 40% of the persons entitled to vote voted at the referendum, and at least 75% of the persons who voted cast their votes in favor of the passing of the bill. So you are saying that when it says, after they've done the first reading, it leaves their hands.
It leaves their hands.
And they cannot do anything about it again unless it has gone to a referendum and come back.
That's right. Which is very different from where...
Who is the sponsor of the bill?
So the sponsor, based on our current constitution, it's still an interpretation issue, because even the speaker now is talking about private members.
No. Who is the sponsor of this bill?
Clear.
The bill for the amendment of 55.3, who is the sponsor?
It's the executive.
It's the executive. So it's a bill, it's not a law.
Sure.
No, I mean every law goes...
Okay. When you introduce a bill in Parliament, are you able to go take it back and revoke it?
Yes, but that's what I'm saying, is that is the difference. See, that's why this article lays a different procedure for this type of bill. In the standing orders, they don't make a distinction between this referendum process and ordinary bills. So that's what I'm saying. I understand
because there's no distinction.
No, but it's a distinction.
No.
Wait, I'll come to you.
There's a distinction. So that's what I'm saying, that if you take by just
you are calling this a special bill. The Constitution doesn't call it a special bill.
And standing orders don't do that too.
That's the standing orders.
They have the urgent bills, but that was passing under certificate. So there's no serious distinction.
What I'm saying is that for me, if I do a purposive interpretation, that's just the policy implications of what you are doing. Because if you create that kind of process, right, you just imagine the cost to the state, where you can truncate, right, a referendum process which has left Parliament, gone out, people are expecting, they are setting up to go and do the referendum, and you can curtail it at any point in time. This might not be the first referendum we're going to have. You cannot create a system where you deliberately waste public resources that way.
So you're talking of two things.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a purposive. That's what I'm saying. It's a purposive.
What do you mean by a referendum process which has left Parliament, when it is the bill that the CI is passed for the EC to implement? In the absence of the bill, What
be
are
no
they
CI.
to implement?
Yeah, but this is what, so what I'm saying is that if you take a normal bill from first reading to second reading, third reading and assent, it does not trigger any kind of public expenditure, with a referendum. It does not trigger any kind of, actions, the kind of actions that a referendum triggers. It will go through the process, through the debates and all of that, and it becomes an act.
Okay.
After it is passed, LTI. But this one, it stops, and then it says go and do certain acts, and then it comes back.
The act,
Now,
it says go and do, it doesn't mandate you. If you check the language, it says shall, at each point shall. When it gets to this point, it doesn't use shall anymore. Does that also inform you about
what
the
the
process?
acts, the CI?
The process in going for the referendum, from clauses 2 going, it uses shall, and then when it gets to 4, where it should be put before a referendum, it refuses to use the word shall.
So what are you saying, that it's discretionary whether you put you put a referendum or not?
I'm asking,
then why
what
would
do
there
you
be a
think?
referendum bill? I don't think that.
Because it's entrenched.
A referendum is different because, and why it remains an entrenched clause, is that the representatives of the people, like 243 for instance, can represent the people, debate and agree on laws. But the referendum is different. Why? Because they want the individual, ordinary citizen to have a say.
Yeah, but the referendum doesn't necessarily amend the the law. It's Parliament does that start after the referendum.
I agree. And that's why I'm saying that if you take, how do you say, a face value, what's the interpretation? Just the reading of it. I completely, no, what you have said is consistent. Even the standing orders, Parliament's rules
That's right.
will be consistent with it. What I'm saying is that it does not make sense to me from a purposive interpretation.
That's what perhaps the Supreme Court should
That if that is the case, then it means that you have created a situation where you can basically go and spend all kinds of resources on organizing a referendum, and it can be truncated at any point in time. That cannot be, from a policy perspective, useful. Can you say this kind of bill should be handled differently? That once you trigger a certain action, you cannot go back to it, right? Depending on whether you are the sponsor or it's a private member sponsoring the bill or not. If you pose a question.
Is there anything in law that you know that once you commence, you cannot undo?
There's no such law.
Well, I don't have any particular law, but if you are thinking that I only will take this action if
It favors me.
No.
Okay.
If you are thinking that I will only take this action because of the consequences of pulling back on the action, impacts, it's particularly from a cost point of view, that if you are not ready to do that, then you should not.
Okay.
If you cross the Rubicon, then
let
really
me
you
do
should.
quickly, and let's be brief
You
about
should
it.
be-
We have
you
some
should
20
be.
minutes to go. Yes, Kofi. Kofi, unlike Kweku Baako began from no and came to yes, and then came to abandonment.
No, not relative to the referendum.
But
I was telling you
but
my
why
history.
did you give me
Wait,
the,
and then-
you
no,
didn't
no,
describe
I was telling you my history.
where I
But
started
relative,
this matter.
yes.
relative to the referendum,
Right.
I had not expressed any point except
Okay.
to abandon it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I had a discussion with you. You were from a bit of a no, and then you
I
had
was
come
telling
to a
the
yes.
trajectory, my
Okay.
history from the
Okay.
I said 1999.
Okay. Right,
coming,
I
yes.
get that. So Kofi is here. He was from a not too clear yes, and then eventually came to a no.
Hey,
Where do you stand?
Influenced by you.
yes or no?
Mr.
I
No.
don't go there.
You
I
don't go
said
there.
On the
Yeah, so
merits of it.
did the president do anything wrong?
On the merits of the yes or no, I am sitting out that discussion. But the issue of whether the president's action
Okay, so you said yes or no is immaterial.
is immaterial, and I
Okay.
can explain that very well.
Okay.
But let's come to this issue.
Right.
We need to do a bit of education. Give me 1 minute for that. See, in a country governed by laws, you have the Constitution, which tells you or tells people what to do. And then you have laws, acts, that also tell people what to do. Now, when the Constitution tells you what to do, EC, you shall organize elections, or it says AMA, you shall make sure that the city is clean. It doesn't tell you how to do it. Now, so when you are an authority, or you are the EC, or you are a state institution or whatever, and you have a duty imposed either by the Constitution or by an act of Parliament, you now, according to the Constitution, should go and set out processes and procedure so that it is not in the mind of the chief executive how he's going to do his work. You now publish what is called a legislative instrument if it is an act giving you the power, or if it's a constitution giving you the power like EC, you publish a constitutional instrument that tells everybody that this election we are going to go into, we will use photo ID cards. This election, you start from 6 and close at 8. You tell now how you will do what the law says you should do. So there's one thing, what to do. A law or an act, that is a constitution or an act, gives you that. How you will do it, you have to come and spell it out. Now, on this specific issue, it is about a referendum. The referendum only comes in because it is an entrenched provision, and therefore, in the normal situation where Parliament passes a law, a bill will go before Parliament. A bill is a draft law. It is not a law. Parliament will deliberate that bill and then make it into a law. The person who brings the bill owns the bill as long as it is a bill. But after it is passed as a law, it doesn't belong to that person again. It becomes an act of Parliament, and it is binding on everybody in the country. But when it comes to things that are entrenched in the Constitution, the deliberation of Parliament cannot happen only within Parliament. The Constitution says that Parliament, when you finish first reading or so, hold it. Go to the people and get them to approve this bill. Once they approve it, you don't even have any business deliberating it. Just pass it. Okay? So in this particular case, Parliament has a bill, which is a draft. It is not a law. And the Constitution says, don't even discuss it too much. This is for the people to decide. Go to the people and ask. When they agree, you pass it. If they don't agree, you don't pass it. It's still not a law. At the point of a bill, like I said earlier, it still belongs to the person who proposed it. And the law in 297, the Constitution in Article 297 says, if you make a proposal that they should do this or that, and later you change your mind, you can come and take your thing and go away. Because at that point, it is still not a law. It is still not binding on the country. It is still a draft. It is still a proposal. Now, you have a situation where the president made an announcement and gave many reasons. And his reasons, they are there. But effectively, he said, I don't think we should go ahead with this exercise anymore. Originally, I actually made a post and said that the president giving us his reasons and making an announcement and etc. does not stop the process, because essentially it is the expression of an opinion. But subsequently, you realize that if he had just left it at a TV announcement, then maybe would have gone ahead. But if he took proper steps to withdraw the bill from Parliament, then the what that we are trying to do is no longer there.
Exactly.
So if the what you are trying to do is no longer there, there is no point about the constitutional instrument. And I believe the president took those steps. So the question I ask those who say it is not correct is that what law stops the president from doing so?
Okay, so let me do this. Let's get Sule to speak briefly about it. And then I want you guys to answer the question, what next? What should happen? There have been statements and people have made calls, and reading the one issued by the One Ghana movement, they said we can still go ahead with making MMDCEs elective without 55(3) being amended at a referendum. So the president should commit to that if he really means business. The NDC accuses the president of not actually being committed to making MMDCEs elective in this regard. Okay, so yes, Cyril, let's hear you. Well, and Akufo-Addo has a comment here. I'll share with you.
I'm not a lawyer, just as Kwaku said, and so we get educated, and through the education we try to get our minds, settled on what our positions will be. From the conversation so far, and Kofi emphasized the fact that first reading is a bill. At the time it is going for referendum, it's a bill. I have a fundamental question therefore, because my understanding as a non-lawyer would be that, in fact, until Parliament approves it after the referendum and the President assents to it, it is not a law.
Absolutely.
Therefore, the question is, are we then saying that, in fact, when the referendum is even conducted, just after the referendum is conducted, ended, hasn't gone to Parliament, in fact, it remains a bill. The people have just made a decision on a bill, but it is not a law. At that point, can the President then say, look, I've thought about ABC, and since it's still, Parliament hasn't then acted on it yet, I haven't signed, it's still a bill, therefore I'm withdrawing. Yeah. Because if we make that strong argument that it is a bill and the sponsor can withdraw, that is one question. The other question relates to my thinking around first reading. The Constitution says stop after first reading. You have no business to touch it until it goes out to the people for the people to decide.
It says unless.
Well, unless.
It's actually not until.
Well, unless. So in fact, unless it's even stronger. Unless it's even stronger. That once you do the first reading, leave it. And when you leave it, it tells you what to do. It doesn't say that leave it and then if there is any action, you can decide to touch it again. So leave it unless it goes out to the people. Here's the case, it hasn't gone out to the people, and Parliament goes back to act on that bill by the withdrawal.
Okay.
My other question is, I was reading as a non-lawyer, and my understanding was that, in fact, CIs, when we talk about the laws of Ghana, they include CIs. They include constitutional instruments.
The subsidiary law.
Yeah? So my understanding was that when we say the laws of Ghana, it includes constitutional instruments.
Sure.
And so for this referendum, there is a constitutional instrument. Therefore, that constitutional instrument, until the President said it must be withdrawn, the process must be truncated, was it part of our laws? If it was, are there processes for repealing, removing?
Address yourself to 297.
No.
So let me finish answering the question.
Yes,
then we can answer
I think
are there
that
processes for repealing CIs?
Yes. Are there processes for repealing CIs? Would that process include the President going back to say, look, the whole thing that started and introduced this CI, I'm withdrawing it, and therefore this CI becomes null and void? I think that for these questions and my understanding of it, it would be great if this whole idea of going to the Supreme Court to seek interpretation so that it settles us. And in the future, no president would think or would say, okay, the thing has gone to a referendum. Oh, 2 days before the referendum is even held, I've changed my mind.
You think anybody will think that we would dare?
No,
that
it depends
after a referendum they will decide otherwise?
But I'm saying that in this case, what it means is that in fact 2 days before the referendum, the president could have truncated the process. In fact, a day before the referendum, the president could have, because we are saying that once it's a bill, it can be done.
So do you find there is a problem with that way of looking at it?
I think so. I mean, as Kojo was saying,
where you look at it to say that even after a referendum, a president has the discretion to.
But we should deal with that.
Because there is that emphasis that until it becomes law,
Kofi, just a minute.
The sponsor can withdraw
just a minute. And I want to ask about going forward. Yes, so just a minute.
So let's deal with that. The referendum is a legal act. Once the referendum happens, you can't withdraw. Because if you read the law, and we don't have time, it shows that the referendum does not even give you opportunity to discuss the bill further. So you can go all the way to 10 minutes before the referendum. But once the people decide, the president decides. No, hold on.
You can go 10
there's the
minutes to
nature of the law.
And you abandon it.
No,
I don't think
you are saying two different things. Please.
You are inviting us.
You see, because of time, I'm a bit. But we are not. You are worried about
legalese.
If 10 minutes to the referendum, there's force majeure, what happens?
Oh, well, but that one is even catered for in the Constitution, I suppose.
Okay.
So then we will resort to the Constitution
for,
again.
It's not created for in the Constitution.
You understand? No,
the Constitution doesn't create for everything. it doesn't create for everything.
It's something
And
that
that's
is
why you
legally
may have heard me say
provided.
the law does not concern itself with trifles.
Does it?
The second issue, how do you deal with a CI?
How do we move on? I think we should move on from here. We have just a couple of minutes to go.
The CI.
Quickly.
Let me explain. A CI, in a sense, is like an ally. Now, if the parent law, okay, is repealed, the CI or the LI dies with it. No. Like, I beg you. Let me try and explain. You have what to do. We are going into a referendum. Now, the referendum has to be ordered in a certain way. The CI is supposed to order the referendum, how to do the referendum. If there is no referendum to be done, the CI dies. That's why I use the issue of the LI. If you have a law, the LI shows you how to operationalize the law. If the law is repealed, the LI dies. It's a chain effect.
It's a bill.
Yes.
So no, a bill is a draft. It's not a law. A bill does not have a legal force by itself.
But you're using mother law.
After first reading, it is still a bill.
But you are using, Kofi, you are using mother statute.
No. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so you let's move on.
Yeah. So
okay.
How do you?
Okay, yeah. So Kojo or the minority have suggested they may try.
There's no ambiguity.
Yeah. Okay, so what do we do? Sule, let's do it quickly this way, just a minute each. What should we do going forward?
Well, I think that for me, what the ordinary people want is that power to determine who becomes their chief executive. And that power, to grant that power does not require a referendum. It's just a parliamentary process. Unfortunately, the president, in truncating the referendum process, also decided that that process must also end.
Okay.
And I think that if indeed the president or the government is committed to giving power to the people as promised in the manifesto, because in the manifesto what is stated there is not that it will be done in a partisan way. It just says that it will be granted the people, it will grant the people the power.
Okay.
And so let the government again sponsor 2431.
Thank you.
For Parliament to approve it.
Thank you. Yes, Kofi, 1 minute.
Article 55(3), it says that a political party is free to participate in shaping the political will of the people, to disseminate information on political ideas, social and economic programs of a national character, and sponsor candidates for elections to any public office other than to district assemblies, lower local government units. What it means is that political parties can do whatever and everything they want within the political space, but they should not be involved in lower and district or local level elections. If we go to elect DCs without putting your name on that particular candidate, nothing stops you from influencing them, from telling them what to do, etc. And why I said I was setting out this thing is that it is of no moment because we know they are involved anyway. The only thing is don't put your flag on that person. I think what we want is to elect DCs. Yes. It is not important whether they are of this party or of that party.
Can we elect them without amending Article 55(3)?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Yes.
Yeah,
so we should go ahead with that project?
That's it. That's what we should focus on, and not the political parties.
So what do you say? There are those who are accusing the president and the government that we knew at the start that even though they promised this, the party didn't support the president. They didn't want MMDCEs to be elective. So this was sort of a compromise they got with him that let's make it partisan. That is why if they are not getting it to be partisan, then they will take their football from the pitch. What should happen?
No, seriously. So I think for me, we need to breathe some fresh air into this democracy. I feel all of the discussions, both 55(3) and 2431, basically was a trigger. It needs to open up the system.
Okay.
So I don't have a problem which one starts.
Okay.
I think we should elect DCs. I think even the Afrobarometer has shown there's popular support for it. We should elect MMDCEs. That is going to really provide some energy.
So why did the president cancel the two?
Well, because it's almost like unilateral disarmament. You know, like you are passing a legislation where you are disqualifying yourself from participating. And as a sponsor, and particularly because 243 was just left with Parliament, then, you know, it's like...
So the NDC and others are writing, accusing the president that he's actually not really committed to making MMDCEs elective.
Well, he will make the argument that he sees the two legislations linked. So as a sponsor, that's his perspective. And that's why he wants to pull it out, because he presented those two bills. So that's how he will present the case.
Okay.
But I think for the people, it's very clear that they want their mayors elected.
Right. Okay. Yes, Koku.
What should
do you say? How do you go
what
forward?
should the president be telling the NDC, who forced 55-3 to the front line? Check all the documentation.
We want to move forward.
I said check the documentation.
Yes, we have
they
gone beyond that.
actually forced it to become a
So we have gone beyond that. We are moving on. What should we
Project
do?
abandoned. Both sides. Case
Why?
closed.
But
Why?
we elect.
Why?
Listen, case closed.
Including the election.
Until further notice.
Including the election.
Yes.
That would be catastrophic. Look, the president should be
I'm
commended
talking
for
of
taking
the
the
election of
steps.
MMDCEs.
Yes.
That's what you are talking
Yes.
about.
Yes.
Case closed.
We shouldn't elect
Until further
MMDCEs.
notice.
No.
Court rise.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm sorry. That's all time will allow us.
This one does not kill the move towards electing MMDCs.
That's all.
Case closed.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Thank you. And those who think they are linked have not thought about implied exclusion in the law. This one from Akufo-Addo says that I did not think the referendum on Article 55.3 was necessary, and I consider its cancellation as a vote of confidence in non-partisan local election. While the cancellation may be justified on political grounds, the legal case for it is non-existence. Those who justify it on legal grounds do so arguing that a bill sponsor can withdraw it at any time. Presumably, these people would have no difficulty with cancelling the referendum on December 17 merely because the bill sponsor decides to withdraw the bill on that day. He's got a lot more to say, but unfortunately, this is all time will allow us. My guests have been Kofu, editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Kojo Pumpuni Asante, doctor, he's with CDD. Kofi Bentel is with Imani Africa. And Suleimana Brahima is with the Media Foundation for West Africa. Like we say, all together against corruption. Thank you very much for your time.
All together against corruption.
All together against corruption.